One thing we are also worried about our government is our government accounts, the deficit, right? I'd like to say that that's another area that I think the media stirs emotions within us, much more than the facts state. If you look at these charts, the first pair is looking at total government, meaning federal, state, local, receipts and expenditures, okay? That's for the federal, so the difference is state and local, right? So when we talk about government growing, it's growing actually in the past few decades, it's grown more on the state and local side, not as much on the federal side. You can see how flat this is relative to that. That is one thing. The next thing is you can see how the deficit, which is the net, is down here, which means that tax collections, tax receipts are at the lowest they've been in a while. So actually, part of the treatment in the hospital has to include, I'm seeking help here. I know we don't like it. I don't like it as much as you. Tax increases. Yes. But I'll say the debt can be managed because an individual, Jack will lend to an individual maximum of about 30 years for a house. We went to 40 years during the spree at some point, and we even went to 7 and 8 years for cars and stuff like that. But we are pulling back, tightening credit and getting back to the sensible days again. For a country and a people, our lifespan is not 70 years. So we can actually take a plan and pay it off if we want to. Economists will tell you that lending and borrowing actually grow the economy better. So you need a mix of both, right? If you look at that first bullet, it tells you that for the past 80 years, from 1929 to 2009, as a nation, we had been running a deficit of 1.1% of GDP. That is very encouraging. It means we can manage our debt. And the world continues to buy our debt, meaning that we have something that nobody else has. So I think we have competitive advantage, Court. But the main point is we have to do it in an optimal manner, a sustainable manner, an equitable manner. It has to be fair, and it has to be flexible because there are always uncertainties. So we have a great country, and I can tell you our problems are not as big as we are made to think they are. Does that mean we should ride? No. I don't think we should coast. I think we should do the right thing and demand that of our leaders as well. But the right thing includes not just spending cuts, but tax hikes. And that's where the math takes us. Okay. Conclusions, is going to be a good year for the nation. There's no question that we got our sugar fix, and that sugar fix is going to help this year and next year. But we have to make some hard decisions after that on infrastructure, on education, on the debt and the deficit, and on tax reform. Last night, a couple of us were discussing this at the reception. And one of the points that came up was interesting because it recognized that just by tax reform alone, simplifying our tax code would help us save about $300 to $400 billion. And then we can put some of those accountants and others to other work. They become available to do other stuff and grow the economy. Inflation is not an issue. We are known for productivity in this country. It can raise our forecasts. If our leaders decide to finally address the infrastructure needs issue, it will do that as well. On the downside, If there are any undesirable political actions, it will bring us down. And, you know, every now and then you hear of something new out of the financial crisis. And those things we are afraid of. We don't know if we've uncovered everything yet. So that's it. Alabama, where are we? We are at about 4.8 million people now. And our median age is slightly above the nation's. But we've grown 7.5% since 2000. And nobody expected us to. The past decade has been referred to, or is being referred to by many as the lost decade for the U.S. For Alabama, it's been one of our best decades, despite 2 recessions. And I'll show you why in a second. Per capita income is at 33.3. We have 2.1 million labor force. It had reached 2.2 million when times were good, but you know, discouraged workers, etc. So it's a little down. Most of us commute out of the city we live in for work. Okay, so that's something to know when you're looking for workers, etc. And we know that here in Jefferson County. I mean, the other counties around us often supply us the labor, we give them jobs. Housing, you guys know this better than I do. We have about 2.2 million, 85% occupied, and we like home ownership in the States. We have a slightly higher home ownership rate than the nation. We produce about 1.2% of the nation's GDP. We are at about 170 billion now, and manufacturing is important to us. I did mention that, you know, the last decade was better, and you can see it even in GDP growth. Our GDP grew faster than the nation's. Manufacturing is important to us, so we like to look at it. It employs 13% of our workers, produces 1/5 of our output, and transportation equipment is the big muscle there. It's helped the industry or the sector a ton. 97, we had just the M class coming out late in the year. Now we have about 9 models, you know, and then we'll have the C class as well in 2014. We have engine and parts production. We also have this sector hiring about 46,000 people. And it's very, very productive. You know, you look at 13% of workers to 20% up there, but with 2.5% of workers, they are producing 5% of the GDP, of our state GDP. So manufacturing is important to us. By metro area, you see these guys? They are representing the 4 big metro areas that produces roughly 60% of our GDP. And before I forget, they also contributed a lot to the successes we enjoyed in the last decade. So we'll have to give them a round of applause, you know, but later, not now, after they give me $5. This chart basically says, you know, the relative sizes of our metro areas, and it tells us how much we have in jobs and GDP. And we have strengths in our state economy. Actually, our business executives are much more optimistic about the state economy than the national economy. So if I say this year is going to be good for the national economy, guess what? It's going to be even better for us. But remember, please don't wait till you feel it, because if you wait till you feel it, it means somebody else may have seen it and beat you to it. Look for it. We had accolades, you know, we had towns being selected on, you know, best places to live and do business. Rick here knows that. Huntsville got a ton of those. Auburn did. I work in Tuscaloosa, but I'll acknowledge Auburn's. It's fine. But we do have lots of things going for us. We have more people coming to the state than was expected. Moving companies say they move more people into the state than they move out. So that's good. Per capita income is at the highest levels relative to the nations that it's ever been. Business optimism is up, you know, so in the state, we have new political leaders, and that's always a plus and a minus. You know, we have to wait till we see what's coming. But job growth, and this is most important, job growth is returning. And you can see in this chart for our metro areas that compared to October 2009, unemployment rate is down across the board. No question. Now, Jack referred to the World Cup soccer. I'm going to remind you about the sprints. You know, Jamaica had a sprinter who would strike this pose. Usain Bolt, if you guys remember. Yeah, I am striking it for Alabama. Okay? And that's our per capita income. Back in the day, it used to be about half the nation's. You can see it. It dipped a little bit in the 90s, went up and dipped, but look what we did in the last decade. So we are getting there, and please help me. Please help these guys. We all help the state to get to 100% and better of the nation's per capita income. We can do it. Huntsville has our highest median family income, and it's mainly because more of them work, okay, in the family. And so that helps them. But that exceeds the nations, and it's a good story for us to tell. There are always challenges, and a few that we highlight here are, you know, consumers holding back. And I think it's a challenge, but it's also a good thing, because once we set our debt situation right, long-term growth would be on a good, sustainable path. So, yes, they should hold back some, but whilst they're holding back, the public sector would suffer some because we won't have enough tax revenues. To date, taxes are a little bit better than we had estimated, and we hope it continues that way. We have continued problems in your sector, but it's getting better. We think we've bottomed out. Many analysts think maybe not on prices, but at least in terms of sales. And there's a lot of inventory there. If actions are taken in D.C. that cuts some of the money flow to Montgomery, to Mobile, to Huntsville, etc., that's going to hurt us too. And if our political leaders don't do the right thing, it's going to hurt us. So we have to make sure we get them to do the right thing. We have to remind them it's about us, the people, and that we are watching. Because if they don't do what they ask them to do, we can use our eraser again, right? We can vote them out. But before we get to the next voting date, we can say, guys, we are watching. And let's not forget it. What all this means for us is 3.4%, and we think that's a little conservative because we haven't actually included the sugar fix in this forecast yet. We need some more data to do so. But 3.4% growth in GDP and about a 0.7 to 1% growth in employment. We have this table as a summary, which says, you know, 3.4 would be good GDP, even better in next year, and next year would be much better on employment as well. Tax receipts are still going to be less than average, you know, unless some of us start giving me $5, which I'll collect. I'll think about whether to give it to the Jimmy Hale mission or take it to Vegas. So Montgomery is not going to see it. But I'll stop here and say thank you very much and a happy new year to you, and I hope it's a really good year for all of us. Thank you.